Breaking news, Notre Dame's medieval roof structure has been lost. Just a part of the horrific devastation from the blaze that has been ravaging the cathedral. I want to show you again the first picture that we have from inside the cathedral. There it is. And obviously, that cathedral is not something anyone is going to be able to go into for a long time. But these are the first images that we have. And you can still see that heat and fire there at the top of the arches. Of course, it's impossible to know the full extent of the damage right now. That's the bottom line. Tom Foreman is out front to give us a sense of how big the fire is, the best that you can tell us right now. Tom, I mean, you have hundreds of firefighters who are working under incredibly difficult circumstances, very dangerous circumstances.
Yeah, and this wasn't an easy fire to get to either, Aaron. Those pictures are just stunning you were showing a minute ago here. Look, there are 9 different bridges that lead to Ile de la Cité, which is in the middle of the River Seine. It's an island, and they had to get through that in rush hour traffic to try to reach the cathedral. And bear in mind, the height was a big issue, too. We believe from all the images that the fire started somewhere around the base of this spire in the middle, and then it shot up that spire. This tip right up there, that's a football field above the ground, so you get a sense of how high they were having to work. So what was underneath all of this as it spread to the entire roof? Well, we know that underneath was, as your previous guest noted, extraordinary treasures, a beautiful, soaring, open space. There were, in certain areas here, like the area called the choir, really intricate and beautiful carving. So there was a lot of wood inside this stone building to feed the fire. There were also other things that would draw a lot of attention to people here. For example, the organ. This was last renovated in a big way in 1730, but it's older than that. It has more than 8,000 pipes, 5 keyboards. We don't really know the fate of the organ at this point. One of the most famous musical instruments in the world. And, of course, the rose windows, just mentioned a moment ago. About 13 million tourists a year come, and this is one of the main things that draws them. These extraordinary pieces of stained glass, some of the best you'll find anywhere on the planet, Aaron.
And that's just some of the history, Tom, of what's inside that building that, of course, the president of France had just said is, the heart and soul of France. Obviously, it's a Catholic cathedral. It's a religious building, but it is much, much more than that.
Oh, yeah, there's a reason this is a World Heritage Site. Remember, this is where Napoleon became an emperor. This is where Joan of Arc started on her path to becoming a saint. This is where so many giant world events, world wars, swirled around. And there are paintings, and there are drawings, and there are architectural plans that were all stored here. Notably, there is also this. You may have heard people talk about the crown of thorns. This is a religious relic which true believers believe is the crown worn by Christ on his way to crucifixion. Imagine the importance of this relic during this Easter season. And beyond all that, there is still at least some positive news. As your guest mentioned, maybe things are being saved here. We know that more than a dozen priceless statues were removed as part of this renovation just last week, Aaron. So we have to hope for a lot more good news like that.
All right, Tom Foreman, thank you very much. I want to go now to John LaFemina, former battalion chief for the New York Fire Department. And John, look, I appreciate your time. You've got over 6 hours so far of the fire, and obviously you have parts, as you can see from those first internal pictures, where it is still, whatever that structure may be that we are looking at in some of those, but completely red with the heat. What makes it so difficult to put out a fire like this one?
Well, the age of the building, the type of construction, the components that it's made from, mostly non-combustible surrounding exterior. That's still what's remaining. All the roof supports, all the interior framing is all wood. Very dry, burns very well. And you saw how quickly the fire spread. And that's what you're seeing as what's left, and is probably going to burn for a while until it either extinguishes itself or the water does.
And the question on this one, you obviously, the point you're pointing out, there's so much wood in there, but you have all of this stone and obviously 850-year-old structure of, bits and pieces constructed over hundreds of years. But I mean, you're talking about an incredible amount of stone, and stone that I would imagine they fully know exactly how secure or insecure it is given the age of the building.
Well, before the fire, of course, it was probably very secure, probably almost as secure as when it was built in whatever chronological order it came. The fire does change that, right? We have some serious structural damage. We have some loads placed on the structure that we weren't intending, so we don't know what was weakened and what wasn't. That's going to come after the fire is extinguished. From what I've seen, looking at the internet, I see some. It looks like the exterior structure will remain intact. There could be localized collapses, inward or outward, depending upon how the heat has affected that. But it looks like most of it, the masonry part will stand. And then, of course, whoever is technologically capable of determining what's needed to make sure it's structurally sound to rebuild will have to do that.
John, during all of this today, President Trump tweeted, "So horrible to watch the massive fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Perhaps flying water tankers could be used to put it out. Must act quickly." In all of this, what was happening today, obviously, the French Civil Defense Agency was angry enough to respond in English. Well, they tweeted in English this after that. Hundreds of firemen of the Paris Fire Brigade are doing everything they can to bring the terrible fire under control. All means are being used except for water bombing aircrafts, which, if used, could lead to the collapse of the entire structure of the cathedral. Now, obviously, John, I'm not asking you to weigh in on the politics of the president weighing in with his personal opinion on a fire or their decision to respond. But they obviously wanted to dismiss what he said, suggesting this flying water tankers. Why would that not have worked?
Well, I think for the reasons they said, you may have a load that hits the building. The water has a weight, and it can come down with significant force and cause a collapse that's unintended. That's not the traditional way in which we would fight a fire like this. That's more for forest fires, where the damage that may incur is not critical to kind of keeping the structure as much intact as possible.
All right. Thank you very much for explaining that so clearly. John, thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you.